The Straw Hat crew is some of the weakest crew members of any Yonko in One Piece history. So, excluding the monster quadruple now with Jinbei, Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy, the rest of the crew is lackluster to say the least. For a Yonko crew, a majority of the crew members are still relatively weak. We have Nami, Robin, Usopp, Chopper, Frankie, and Brook. They're all relatively weak when you actually compare them to the feats of Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei. And a majority of them don't even have access to any of the forms of haki. And yes, Frankie and Robin were able to take out some of the Toporopo from Kaido's crew, but to be fair, the Toporopo that Frankie and Robin beat weren't really the strongest of this elite group from Kaido. As we enter this final stage of One Piece where Luffy is considered an emperor and everyone on the crew is part of an emperor's crew, it really doesn't make sense when we go into the whole power scaling and how the final fight will be. Because we have so many characters like Nami, Usopp, Chopper, and then the rest of them that don't have access to any basic haki. And when you compare it to Shanks' crew, literally everyone on Shanks' crew probably has access to armament and observation haki, and some of the elite probably have access to the advanced forms of haki. And to see that Luffy's crew is going to eventually have to fight the likes of Shanks, Blackbeard, or Buggy, it doesn't really bode well for the future of One Piece. I feel like Sanji, Zoro, Jinbei, and Luffy will have to take on a majority of the fights when it comes to these Emperor clashes. And just with Buggy's crew alone, Crocodile and Mihawk are probably some of the strongest characters in the verse right now, and I would say that Mihawk is even stronger than Luffy right now. We don't know the full extent of Buggy's crew, and there could be a ton of more powerful villains on that crew. And to be honest, when it comes to the time skip, I think that was one of the most disappointing uses of training arc I've seen in a long time. Because when you think about it, the crew really didn't get that much stronger. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji all learned haki, which is great, but they didn't learn the advanced forms of haki. Starting with Luffy, he had Rayleigh, who is probably the second strongest person in the whole One Piece verse in his golden era, and he knew all three forms of haki: observation, armament, and King's haki. And he also definitely knew Conqueror's coding, but he didn't teach Luffy any of this. And I know that 2 years might be the bare minimum you need to learn haki, but I feel like at the rate Luffy was going and his aptitude for learning, Rayleigh could have just told him, hey, like, these are the different forms of haki. You can do advanced observation to see into the future, and you can also do Conqueror's coding. You'll have to learn that on your own, but I can give you the foundational steps. Like, that made no sense to me that Rayleigh never conveyed this to Luffy, and that Luffy had to learn all this on his own. And same with Zoro. He had Mihawk, who was the world's greatest swordsman, and he didn't teach Zoro any of these advanced forms of haki. And also, I can't believe Zoro never unlocked Conqueror's haki until Wano. Like, that right there made no sense. I think Zoro, since the beginning of the story, was the first character to show any kind of Conqueror's attributes. He took on the world's greatest swordsman with no hesitation in chapter like 30, and he also tested his fate against a cursed blade that could have easily taken off his arm, but he overwhelmed it with his own Conqueror's ability. For him to just awaken his Conqueror's haki in chapter 10:10 makes no absolute sense. He should have had it early on, almost as early as Luffy, and Mihawk should have seen that and have helped him cultivate that Conqueror spirit. And the same goes for Sanji. He was with Ivankov for 2.5 years and didn't learn Future Sight. Ivankov is one of the strongest characters in the Revolutionary Army, and he should have access to all three forms of haki, especially advancements in armament and observation. And Sanji specializes in observation haki, and I feel like Ivankov should have picked up on that and trained him to use Future Sight. A lot of the power-ups that the Straw Hats have gotten since the time skip, I feel like they should have already had it before going into the new world. A lot of this stuff is basic abilities, and I feel like with the mentors that most of the crew had, they should have had access to the different levels and wealth of knowledge that these characters had. And then we go to the weak trio. We have Nami, Chopper, and Usopp. I feel like all three of them should have had some kind of haki training, or at least Luffy and the crew teaching them how to use haki, and like, let's address it in a flashback or something. Because we are in the new world, we are an emperor level crew, and Nami, Usopp, and Chopper barely have any idea what haki is. And what really pisses me off is that Usopp, who is one of the coolest characters in One Piece and is one of Shanks' crew members, has exceptional observation haki and probably access to the other two hakis, But Usopp, who is his biological son and now part of a Yonko crew, which should be equal to Shanks and Usopp, doesn't have any access to haki whatsoever. Usopp unlocked observation haki, but just barely in Dressrosa, and we haven't seen him touch it since. And in Wano, him and Nami were running away from ulti the whole entire time. And if it wasn't for Big Mom, I think Usopp and Nami would have died against ulti. And even in Robin's battle against Black Maria, we still don't know if Robin had access to armament haki. The manga was very confusing with the panel layout and like the color of it. It didn't look like it was any kind of armament haki, but Robin was able to summon that demon form and get the job done. But it wasn't clear that she had access to armament haki. And I honestly cannot see the weaker members of the Straw Hat crew surviving this final war without any access to haki. And I'm trying to figure out where Oda's going to find the time to have these characters learn haki. I do like what Oda has done to circumnavigate some of the haki deficiencies in the crew. For example, with Frankie learning Vegapunk's technology. And Vegapunk created weapons that can touch Kizaru even though he's made of light without any use of haki. And same with Nami. Even though Nami has no access to haki whatsoever, she was able to get an Emperor level ally with Zeus. But I don't know if these weapons or tools are going to be useful if the crew doesn't have access to armament haki, because you cannot touch or hurt Devil Fruit users, especially Logia type users, without access to armament haki. So as we get into this final saga of One Piece, I'm very worried for the weaker members of the crew, and I honestly don't know what they can do to help out the crew if they don't have access to haki. I honestly am super disappointed in the time skip, and I thought that every Straw Hat member would be able to use haki by this point in the story. But tell me, what do you guys think? Are you guys disappointed in the time skip like I am, or do you guys think that the crew is fine as they are now? But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.